The Aurigan Reach is a region of space located just beyond the rimward edge of the Inner Sphere, situated in the crook along the Capellan Confederation and Taurian Concordat border. The area was first settled during the Age of War by people hailing from the Free Worlds League. When the Taurian Concordat dramatically re-emerged onto the galactic scene after over 150 years in isolation, it inspired a new wave of independent colonists seeking a fresh start to head out into the Periphery, hoping to escape the constant wars that marked that era. At first, these new colonies were little more than small farming communities, far too insignificant to gain the attention of the surrounding nations. This changed with the founding of the Star League and the commencement of the Reunification War. The nascent Star League Defense Force set up staging grounds in the Aurigan Reach, most notably on Panzer, to support Operation Bull Run, the ongoing campaign against the Taurian Concordat. In the wake of their victory, the Star League imposed controls on the newly conquered territorial state, along with their partner the Magistracy of Canopus, that restricted how far they could expand into the Aurigan Reach, despite their existing interests in that area of space. Later, a series of outposts and fortifications were constructed by the SLDF in an effort to keep a watchful eye over the rebellious Periphery states. During the next 2 centuries, the Aurigan Reach was steadily industrialized by 2 major players. The Capellan Confederation received the full blessing of the Star League High Council to take whatever systems they wanted. They built several forts of their own and turned the planet Mektur into a powerful manufacturing hub. The Taurian Concordat had also pushed the limits of permitted expansion to stretch out as far as Coromadir, where they constructed a grand palace at the center of what was the most heavily populated world within that region. House Calderon had more nefarious activities going on in the Aurigan Reach. Beyond their borders, they had clandestinely bolstered their defense industry with new factories outside the Star League's oversight. As the era drew towards its fiery conclusion, Nicoletta Calderon built up a force of 12 divisions outfitted with the products of these hidden facilities. Heavier machinery in the form of Age of War vintage battle mechs were supplied by her ally, Stefan Amaris. Operation Torch ignited the Periphery uprising, and when the secret army swept into the Taurian Concordat en masse, they overwhelmed and eradicated the Star League Defense Force in what they now dubbed the Freedom War. Only when Commanding General Alexander Kerensky maneuvered reinforcements to the territorial states was he able to restore some semblance of control. Before he could finish the job, the Amaris coup on Terra forced him to make a premature peace with the Periphery nations, begrudgingly granting them their independence so that he could direct his full attention to dealing with the usurper on Terra. The secret army had been composed of many dissidents and malcontents who were not prepared to play nicely with House Calderon in the wake of the conflict. Many returned to their hidden outposts, taking their equipment with them where it was either hidden or abandoned. Likewise, once the Star League Civil War came to an end and Kerensky made the decision to lead his defense force on an exodus, not all of the supply caches at their Periphery bases were cleared out. These 2 facts have given the Aurigan Reach a reputation for hidden treasures and lost tech, drawing many fortune seekers out to these remote systems. The commencement of the Succession Wars drew the attention of the Great Houses away from the Periphery as they vied for control of the empty throne on Terra. The former territorial states struggled to deal with the collapse in interstellar trade that ensued. Interest in the Aurigan Reach initially dropped off until Protector Semyon Calderon decided to launch an abortive campaign to seize control of several independent worlds that lay between his realm and the Magistracy of Canopus, igniting the short-lived Taurian-Canopian War. A series of embarrassing disasters befell both parties, curtailing any other expansionist plans they might have had. The Second Succession War saw both the Capellan Confederation and Taurian Concordat begin to abandon those colonies that were at the fringes of their territory. The local populace had little desire to get dragged into the terrible conflicts, and so welcomed the departure of planetary governors that had been installed by far-off regimes. Some colonies won their independence by trickery, such as the planet MechWarrior, whose wealthy oligarchs conned the Capellan government into thinking that the factories were failing and not worth the effort to maintain. Other planets, like Guldra, dropped off the map by chance when their hyperpulse generator station was destroyed, severing their off-world communications. Many interstellar maps of the era paint a false picture as to the reality on the ground. At a time when so many colonies were dying off due to famine or disease brought on by the Second Succession War, the quiet isolation of the Aurigan Reach went unnoticed. The departure of the great houses and their military garrisons did create problems for the now independent worlds. Banditry and piracy became a serious problem for the region, one that threatened to collapse planetary economies as well as erode the personal fortunes of the wealthy elite that inhabited the Aurigan Reach. To stave off the predations of hostile raiders, the noble families of Arano and Espinosa proposed a trade partnership with their peers within the Decimus, Gallus, Corosas, Madeira, and Pirata families. By pooling their resources, they could safeguard the trade routes between their systems. The planets Guldra and Etrom readily agreed to join with Coromadir, and Tirlon was eventually talked into giving their assent too. In 2870, shortly after the commencement of the Third Succession War, the Aurigan Trade Partnership was formed, with Governor Wiramu Arano chosen as its chief executive. By 2890, another similar alliance, the Duchy of Don't, had sprung up close by. Soon after, the last holdout, House Corosas of Smithen, agreed to join the fledgling trade partnership, completing what are now referred to as the 7 founding houses. Initially, the trade partnership had no designs on becoming its own microstate, but as the succession wars entered the 30th century with no end in sight, the mood began to shift. With the support of the Espinosa family, Kiona Arano proposed that they declare themselves as an independent realm. In 2910, the ruling council agreed to the suggestion and elected Kiona as the High Lady of the Aurigan Coalition. She immediately sought recognition from her closest neighbours, but none was forthcoming at that time. Only the magistracy of Canopus, who supported the idea of a buffer state between them and the Taurian Concordat, officially acknowledged the coalition's founding. The 7-planet alliance soon looked to incorporate other systems to fortify their economy. MechWarrior was their primary target, and some able statesmanship from Arano saw the planet peacefully absorbed into the coalition. 4 others followed suit soon after, some of which had been on the verge of collapsing due to crumbling infrastructure until the arrival of foreign aid. Some trouble did arise between Decimus and Madeira during the 2950s, with the former relocating to Panzer, but for the most part, the alliance moved from strength to strength. The addition of another 7 colonies took them up to the border with the Capellan Confederation, with their influence stretching as far as Maldive. Fialdar became a trade hub for dealing with goods crossing in and out of the inner sphere. Restoring order to the lawless, pirate-infested space fell to the Aurigan Coalition military. Each of the founding houses supported at least 1 regiment of conventional forces, as well as their own mech battalion, the heaviest of which belonged to House Espinosa, who had become the strong right hand to the High Lord. Their families became linked by marriage when Tamati Arano took Serena Espinosa as his wife. The growing strength of the Aurigan Coalition did start to draw the concern of the Taurian Concordat. They were faced with a seemingly expansionist realm on their flank at a time when paranoia over a Federated Sun's invasion was growing. When Arano annexed another 4 worlds into the coalition in the early 31st century, including Calci, which was still claimed by the Taurians, concern turned to distrust. Protector Thomas Calderon dispatched diplomats to Coromadir to negotiate. The High Lord was seemingly prepared to cede control of the contested worlds back to the Concordat in exchange for official recognition of the Aurigan Coalition as an independent nation. There was disagreement among the council, however, which had swelled to more than 24 members, which paralysed discussions. The brash Thomas, meanwhile, saw this puny microstate as nothing but belligerent upstarts, and threatened military action when the expected offer of repatriation was not forthcoming. Tamati's brother-in-law, Santiago Espinosa, urged him to disband the council altogether, or at least limit it to just the founding houses, so that they could consolidate their strength and present a united front to the Taurian Concordat going forwards. Arano would never get the chance to make a decision. In 3022, he and his wife were killed when their jump ship malfunctioned, leaving control of the realm to their 23-year-old daughter, Kamea. Again, Santiago pleaded his case, but the idealistic young heir refused to take the dictatorial actions her uncle was pushing her towards. With growing tensions along their borders, cooperation within the founding council breaking down, and family relations pushed towards their breaking point, a somber mood hung over the upcoming inauguration ceremony for Countess Kamea Arano. Significant challenges lay ahead for the new High Lady of the Aurigan Coalition. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus video on the history of the Aurigan Coalition up to the beginning of the HBS BattleTech game. I didn't want to go any further than that at this stage for anyone who might want to play that game and not have events spoiled, but I will be covering everything that happens during the Arano restoration and everything we know about post-war events as well in a follow-up video at some point in the near future. This was the first part in a mini-series I'm planning that's going to look at some of the minor powers of the Periphery, and it's going to be running concurrently with the Third Succession War. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, leave me a comment. I'll try to respond to as many of you as I can. You can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this. Either way, thank you again for watching, and I'll hope to see you again soon for another video.